we're back for another cooking show with Sharon, the Winey Chef. This time we thought we would present the many ways that you can incorporate our province's liquid gold or maple syrup into your recipes. The recipes we have chosen are all high in antioxidants, which help reduce free radical damage that cause inflammation and contribute to the onset of many chronic diseases. Sharon will be preparing today maple glazed salmon with maple Dijon roasted Brussels sprouts. Then, as a healthy dessert, we found a parsnip cake with maple buttercream icing. Now, this parsnip cake is a delicious alternative to carrot cake. It has a rich, nutty flavor that's perfectly complemented by the maple and nutmeg. And also the cake is refined sugar-free. And that's why we are suggesting that if possible, replace refined sugar in your diet or in your recipes with maple syrup because it has so many nutrients. So we're going to go to Sharon now, who's going to start with
wine. I always start with wine. This is really maple syrup. Later. So here's our beautiful glaze for our Brussels sprouts. And the beauty of Brussels sprouts is that they are durable all winter long. They stay well in a root cellar or in your fridge, not for months and months and months, but for a very long time. What I did first was I took the outer layer of the Brussels sprouts off. And that way you really don't have to wash them if you take off enough of the outer layer. The next thing I do is I take the Brussels sprout and I try and get Brussels sprouts that are all the same size because then they're going to cook harmoniously. You're not going to have some raw and some overdone. And then I will take my lovely knife, there it is, and I am going to cut them lengthwise so that I end up with Brussels sprouts like this. So here I have a pound of Brussels sprouts. That's basically how much you need. Obviously, if there's only 2 people, you might not want to use a whole pound, but that's for you to decide. The glaze itself is balsamic vinegar, mustard, Dijon mustard, olive oil, maple syrup, of course, and salt and pepper to taste. It's written very clearly in the recipe, and it's fairly simple. Obviously, again, if you like Dijon mustard, you can increase that. If you want to put a little bit more maple syrup because you want it more sugary, sweeter, then you would put more maple syrup. So you can play around with the portions. It's not like baking. You can cater it to your taste. So then I'm taking my sauce and I'm pouring it over the Brussels sprouts, and I'll toss the Brussels sprouts so that they're coated generously because I'm not going to waste any of this maple syrup. I've taken a cookie sheet. Now the thing about a cookie sheet is a dark cookie sheet cooks at a higher temperature than the aluminum, the white or the light gray cookie sheet. So I've used a dark one, but it's either aluminum or the dark one has to be coated with the aluminum foil, and that way the sugars won't stick. So I've tossed my Brussels sprouts. Whoop, toss them all over the counter. Look at that. And then I'm going to spread them evenly on the pan, and I'm going to make sure that there is space between each one so that they can cook evenly. So I'm going to spread them out so that they're not touching each other and they'll all be equally cooked. And there's still some some marinade there, which is lovely because it'll caramelize. And there we go. So do you want to talk about the Brussels sprouts?
Oh yes, Brussels sprouts are just like cabbage we did on the last recipe. So they're little mini cabbages. They are so full of nutrients. They're also very low in calories, high in many nutrients, especially fiber, vitamin K, and vitamin C. Fiber, as you well know, promotes regularity. It supports digestive health and reduces the risk of heart disease and diabetes. Just one thing, though, to keep in mind, that those who are taking blood thinning medication, you should moderate your intake of vitamin K. So not too many Brussels sprouts per week. Okay. Brussels sprouts are one of the best sources of omega-3, or plant sources, of omega-3 fatty acids. The omega-3s also, as you perhaps know, are found in fatty fish, and salmon is also what we are preparing today. And so it's a really very nutritious meal if you combine all of these three recipes together. The sources of omega-3 fatty acids in each half cup serving is 135 milligrams. So that's a lot. Omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to reduce blood triglycerides, slow cognitive decline, and reduce insulin resistance, and decrease inflammation. So there you go for Brussels sprouts. Sharon will take over with our maple glazed salmon.
Who knew that something so small could be so powerful? So God bless the Brussels sprouts. Now we have the glaze for the salmon. And the glaze itself is 1/4 cup of maple syrup, soy sauce, Dijon mustard, and garlic. And you'll end up with approximately a cup of the glaze. You simply put your salmon in your casserole dish, and you pour this on the top. And of course, we know that salmon is remarkably high in omega-3s and 6, actually. And there we go. So we're going to glaze it. And I'm going to save some, because when it's all said and done, I'm going to put the remainder on just to give it a nice little je ne sais quoi taste. This can be replaced, the salmon can be replaced with chicken. You could use shrimp. We're using salmon, but it could be any type of fish. If you find salmon is too strong a taste, you're not really a fish person, you can use a milder fish like cod or halibut or something that has a milder taste, but we'll still have those omega-3s. So now I've put my oven at 400, and I'm going to put this in for 20 minutes. So in they go. And in the meantime, I'm going to get ready to make the parsnip cake.
So I'm going to speak a little bit, or perhaps a lot, about maple syrup. There were so many good things to say about it. We should try and support our maple producers. They've had a hard year this past year. And it's not only for pancakes, maple syrup. Even though it can make your pancakes taste sweet, it surprisingly has many health benefits, including providing certain protective phytochemicals. When used in appropriate amounts, meaning not overdoing your sugar intake, maple syrup nutrition benefits can include the ability to lower inflammation, supply nutrients, and better manage blood sugar, all while helping to make recipes taste great. Now, there are several grades of maple syrup. all types of pure maple syrup are either classified as grade A or grade B. And what I mean by pure maple syrup is that's not the stuff that you buy in a plastic bottle in your local grocery store. This is the pure stuff that comes from our maple trees in Quebec. The biggest difference between maple syrup grades is that grade B maple syrup is darker in color and more concentrated. So that's why it's usually used to cook with. Some research also shows that grade B syrup tends to be richer in antioxidants than the grade A. This means that whenever possible, you probably want to select the darker grade B maple syrup when you're cooking. And then we'll go back to Sharon. She's going to start the recipe.
As in any baking or most bakings, you put your dry ingredients together first. So what I have in here with my high-tech strainer, what I have in here is only the flour. I have already pre-measured, just for time allotment's sake, the nutmeg, the cinnamon, the baking powder, the salt. I want to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. And again, if you like nutmeg and you like, cinnamon, you can add more. You can play with that. There's some things in baking you can't, because baking is chemistry. But something like the spices, that's up to you. So I've almost sifted my dry ingredients. I'm now going to add the spices and the salt and the baking powder and all those wonderful magical things. And I've now sifted them into the bowl. Now, the recipe, which is wonderful, calls for 4 cups of parsnips. This is it isn't approximate, it is. This is 4 cups of parsnips. It's, depending on the size of the parsnip, of course, about 3 parsnips will make a cup, if it's the average size parsnip. So this is 4. Now, the recipe says grated parsnip, which is what I did with the first recipe. What I found was it was labor intensive, said my arm, and my finger that I grated along with it. But this is more granular, because what I did instead, I don't know if you can see it, what I did instead is I put it through the blender on the first chop. Mine says it's called snow. I don't know what yours would be called, but it takes less time, and it'll be a finer amount of parsnip. All right, so this is 4 cups of parsnips. All right, so I'm going to stir in the parsnips into the dry ingredients. So there's your 4 cups of parsnips. And I'm going to coat them now with the flour mixture. Make sure they're all coated evenly. So you toss that around. And they don't really stick that well, because they're fairly dry, so they don't stick to the flour. So you have to really make sure that flour is evenly distributed. So this is so there you are. Now I'm going to mix the wet ingredients. So I'll just put that to the side, right there. What I have here are 3 eggs. I've already beaten them so that, you wouldn't have to share in the noise of the beater. So these are the 3 eggs. Into the 3 eggs, I am putting 3/4 of a cup of maple syrup. This is already pre-measured, so this is a wonderful amount of maple syrup. And I think I'm just going to stir that around a little bit. I'm going to add now 1/2 cup of oil. So eggs, maple syrup, oil. 1 cup of Greek yogurt, and the reason for the Greek yogurt is because it's thicker. It doesn't have more fat. This is 0% fat, but it is thicker and it gives a richer consistency. So I'm going to add my yogurt. So already we're upping the nutrition by not using milk, but using yogurt. So it's better for your digestion for sure. And then I'll mix that in. And lastly, I will mix in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. If you have the real vanilla, it's better. It's more expensive, but I believe that it's worth it because you don't get an artificial tang to it. So here's my teaspoon of vanilla. I just want to make sure I have everything in there. Yes, I do. Okay, so here's my liquids, and I'm just going to stir in that yogurt to make sure that this liquid mixture is smooth, because you don't want clumps of yogurt or clumps of parsnips. So you want to make sure that that's evenly distributed. You could also just stick your beater in there for a minute, and that would, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to give it one little splash of air. And that's the beauty of beating the liquid, is because it's putting air into it, because the parsnips are heavy. All right, now I'm going to take my dry ingredients. I'm going to put my wet ingredients in the bowl. So when you think about maple syrup and parsnips and Greek yogurt and eggs in a muffin, you're talking about a lot of hidden nutrition. All right, now this again, you have to very carefully make sure that it is equally distributed. I don't know if that, you see, it would be easy for a little clump of the flour, you see, to hide in the corner. So you have to make sure that you do a little bit more than just folding it in. You have to stir it a bit, but you don't want to overwork it either. And here is your, let's see if I got it all. Yeah, I did. Okay, so this is ready to go into the muffin tins. Now the muffin tins, what I did is I sprayed them first with the PAM spray, because there's nothing worse than getting half a muffin or having to clean the pan. And I also put in little paper cupcake holders, because if you're going to freeze some of them, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, it's easier and neater to have it contained. So that's why I like to use the cups. All right, and then of course you use about maybe a tablespoon, no, maybe more, like a generous soup spoon, and you fill your muffin tins probably 3/4 of the way. All right, I'm not going to go through all of it for you, because what I do to one, I'm doing to them all. This recipe will make 18 muffins. Okay. Originally, the recipe says put it into a 9-inch pan. Now, unless you have a spring-form pan, it's hard to get a baking cake pan that is 9 inches tall. And also because it is heavy, and even the picture of it shows it as very dense, almost like a torte. I found it was better to put it into muffins because it was lighter, and for sure your middle is going to be cooked. Putting it into a big pan risks the idea of maybe the middle being a little bit raw, which you don't want to do. So basically, this is what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fill the 18 muffin tins. If you're using 12, it's always better to use the ones in the middle. And actually, putting a little bit of water in the empty tins is a good idea so they don't burn. Because this is Teflon, it's not going to burn anyways. So it depends on your muffin tins. But don't do that because they won't cook as evenly as if you put them in the middle, because you have equidistant from the edge to the middle. Okay, and otherwise, if they've been here, these are going to cook faster than those. So, just a little note of caution. Okay, Diane, take it away.
Here I go. I don't know where to start. There's so many health benefits. Okay, I'll speak a little bit more about the maple syrup. I have a fun fact here. The color of maple syrup does not reflect the quality, which I had assumed was the way that grade A was better than grade B, but that's not true. It reflects the taste of the maple syrup and often when the tree was sapped. In general, sap is lighter earlier in the season when the sap is new and it's cold outside with snow on the ground. As the season goes on, the sap gets cloudier, darker, stronger, and richer. However, the color depends on temperatures, soils, snow, and other factors. So it has nothing to do with the cooking process. Many folks like the lighter golden-hued syrups, but for baking, the darker, more robust syrup is preferred because of the authentic maple taste that really comes through. I'll move on now to the parsnips, which are in our cake or cupcake recipe. Now, we never thought parsnips could be considered part of a dessert recipe, and that's why we chose it, because it was out of the ordinary. And tasting them, you won't regret it. It was actually very delicious. Parsnips might look a lot like pale carrots, but they're a nutrient-packed root vegetable with a touch of spice, nuttiness, and sweetness. They are an excellent source of many important nutrients and packing a hearty dose of fiber, vitamins, and minerals into each serving. In particular, they are a great source of vitamin C, vitamin K, and folate, which can help to boost your immune system and support infection-fighting white blood cells. Parsnips also improve your digestion because of the high fiber content. 1 cup of parsnips contains 6.5 grams of fiber. That is very high. It is also, fiber's very vital for a healthy gut because it moves food along your digestive tract and improves bowel health. It also helps to slow down sugar absorption to avoid spikes in your blood sugar. Even though parsnips, along with carrots, have a higher glycemic index of 52, they have so much fiber that the sugars don't absorb into your bloodstream all at once. They're also rich in potassium, a mineral that helps your heart function, balances your blood pressure, and lowers your risk for kidney stones. So in summary, parsnips are high in fiber, they improve your digestive health, they regulate blood sugar levels, and enhance your heart health. Who knew? So if you can, include parsnips in some of your everyday recipes. I know that they go very well with potatoes. I've made shepherd's pie, and instead of putting all potatoes for the topping, I have ground parsnips to make it more nutritious as a topping for shepherd's pie. You can use them in purees and stews or soups. And you can whip up this delicious cake or muffins. As Sharon continues to fill her little cupcakes.
It's also if you have a child or grandchild who hates vegetables, it's a good way of disguising them.
Very true.
There are also wonderful recipes with sweet potatoes to put into muffins. And if it looks like a muffin and there's a little something on the top that's enticing to a child, they will eat it. And suddenly they've just eaten parsnips and they don't even know it. So that's why these recipes are quite tantalizing and also important, because I doubt there are a whole lot of children that would say, "Oh, yummy, we're having parsnips tonight." I wouldn't be betting the ranch on that one. So these are ready to go, and I will be putting them in as soon as I check this. Oh my, aren't they wonderful? Okay. Maple leaf, maple syrup. Such a theme person. Okay, so here we have this wonderful, ta-da! Now I'm going to actually stir that around a little bit. Put those in. And what I like to do, if I'm going to be using the oven, I like to try and maximize the fact that I'm using an oven. And you'll notice that everything here is being put in the oven because it is using the oven's heat to a maximum. So in they go. The recipe says 35 minutes, I believe. I kept them in for 40, just to make sure that the center was done properly. Okay, here's the beautiful salmon. I'm just going to spoon as opposed to, because this isn't too cold, because if it was cold it could crack the Pyrex, which would be such a terrible waste of maple syrup. And I'm just going to do that with it. Or you could even put it on a plate and then put the glaze on. But while it's still hot, I'm just going to use up this wonderful marinade. And actually, if you wanted to marinate with this first, you could. But then you couldn't use it afterwards because you would have had raw fish in there or raw chicken. So you might want to take some aside so that you can do this. But don't use the marinade on the final product, because then you're talking about nasty germs and viruses and stuff like that. So there we go. I'm just going to turn these over. I could put them back in to get them crunchier. That would, again, that would be an option, but they're ready as they are. So as I'm going to plate this, is there more that you need or want to say?
Yes, there's a few more things, so you can go ahead and do that. Okay. And I will share some more health benefits. So if you need a strong reason to switch your sweetener, maple syrup nutrition is impressive because when it comes to supplying protective antioxidants. So this is the theme for all three recipes here. I'll go back and remind you what an antioxidant is. It helps reduce free radical damage that can cause inflammation and contribute to the onset of chronic diseases. So the primary antioxidants are phenolic compounds, which are found in a variety of plant foods, including berries, nuts, and whole grains. So it's possible that the benefits of these antioxidants might counteract some of the downsides to consuming syrup's high quantity of sugar. It does have a low score on the glycemic index. Refined sugars on the contrary, contain very little fiber and are known to rapidly metabolize in your liver, causing blood sugar spikes and raise your insulin levels. So this is the reason diabetes develops. So, however, keep in mind that because consuming too much sugar from any source is bad for your health, it's best to minimize sugar intake overall and especially avoid refined sugars. Last but not least, maple syrup, because it contains all of those inflammation-reducing polyphenol antioxidants.
Say that 10 times.
No kidding. It can help protect the brain by reducing oxidative stress. Wow, I like that. Mm-hmm. Back to the digestive properties. When you do consume high levels of refined sugar, it can contribute to candida, IBS, leaky gut syndrome, and other digestive system disorders. So if you want to keep your digestive tract in healthier shape and free from chemicals, then maple syrup can be a much better alternative to use in baked goods, yogurt, put on your oatmeal, or put into your smoothies. And the last but not least, maple syrup contains many other compounds. Let's hope I can pronounce these. Oligosaccharides, polysaccharides, organic acids, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. It also contains zinc and manganese in fairly high amounts, in addition to potassium and calcium. Zinc can help fight illness and improve immunity since it keeps your level of white blood cells up, while manganese plays a crucial role in fat and carbohydrate metabolism, calcium absorption, blood sugar regulation, brain and nerve function. Wow, that is a lot. Are you ready, my dear?
I am. So this is the salmon. What I also wanted to mention about the salmon, depending on the depth of the salmon, it may be a little bit more than 20 minutes if you have a thick piece of fillet. If you've got a very thin piece, obviously you cook it for less time. And keep in mind, ideally your fish in the middle should still be a little bit wet, a little bit moist. When it gets too dry and flaky, it's overcooked. However, maple syrup will cover up all the mistakes you make. So here it is. Here's the beautiful salmon with the glazed Brussels sprouts. I'm not sure that you would want to serve them at the same time because that's a lot of maple syrup going on. But just to show you things that you can do with the maple syrup. So I'm just going to place this over here. And I just want to show you the icing. There was a different icing for the parsnip muffins. I tried it and gagged. So I'm not going to share that with you because it was sweet potatoes and ginger, and the two of them together just somehow did not marry well. So I made my own with a buttercream maple. It's basically the icing that you would know with the butter. You whip up your butter, you put in your maple syrup and your icing sugar alternately, and you beat it and make sure that it doesn't have any lumps in it. And eventually you will end up with this. Why is this in here instead of in a bowl? Because I'm not going to ice them all. Because maybe I don't want to use all of them. Or maybe, we're not supposed to have anyone over as guests, so heaven forbid, Mr. Legault. So what I've done is these are going into the freezer. And then I will take out, maybe I'm going to take out 4 or 3 at a time. This will preserve really nicely in your fridge, so I keep it separate. And then when 3 or 4 of them thaw, I will ice them, put the remaining muffins back in the freezer. So this recipe, although it's a bit of a labor intensive with the parsnips or having to grate them, it goes a long way because you do end up with 18 muffins. So, or you can give them away. Now, if you were giving them away, you might want to dress them up a little bit. So I'm going to show you. I will show you what I've done. So I've taken the muffins, I have put the buttercream on them, and then just to up the nutrition again, I put flaxseed on the top. And it gives it a crunchy, nutty taste. On this one, I put walnuts, and that gives it a very, walnuts and maple syrup marry very nicely together. And then, of course, I have, because this is before Easter, although you'll be seeing this after Easter, I put little chocolates on the top to entice the children to eat this. And of course, they can't eat this until they eat the muffin and they get their parsnip. And of course, that lends to the eternal question, which did come first? Was it the chicken or was it the egg? We'll never know. Happy spring.
I hope you enjoy these recipes and they're a healthy addition to your diet. We've tried our best to choose things that are good for you. So thank you again, Winey Chef. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we wish you a joyous spring.